Damar Hamlin was in the middle of a major play during his football game, his NFL level football game, that is. And in a tackle move, he was struck in the chest. Helmet hit his chest. Immediately after that, he loses consciousness. We later find out that his heart had stopped. And so, by all functional means, he died in that moment. Less than a minute passes before the medical team approaches him and immediately starts doing chest compressions. And that's what I really want to talk about in this video. As of this filming, we know that Damar Hamlin is very unfortunately still in critical condition, but he is alive. And the only reason he is alive is because he received what we call bystander CPR. And this is a topic that I really want to delve into because I feel like this is an opportunity for us to learn how to save a life. Like, quite literally, if you want to talk about how to save a life, this is it. Bystander CPR is it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bernice. I am an emergency medicine resident physician focusing on pre-hospital medicine known as emergency medical services. I have studied health policy. I'm very interested in the way that healthcare is delivered both in and outside of the realm of a hospital. And this, my friends, was one of the largest stages where we saw the consequences and the stakes of this topic. I have to first be honest with you that I'm not the most adept at football. I don't usually watch it on Monday nights. So the fact that I heard about this story as somebody who's not a common consumer of football means that this really did hit the national waves. This is a huge story, which means there is a lot of focus on what happened. How could this have possibly happened? What do we do now? There's so many questions. So let me start with the first one. From the information that is publicly available and from the information that I can access, what we know is that once he got the blunt force trauma, his heart went into an abnormal rhythm. My understanding from the articles I've read, and there may be more information that comes out later that further clarifies this, my understanding is that his heart went into a rhythm called ventricular fibrillation. So your heart, it's a large muscle situated in your chest, protected by your rib cage, and it pumps with a very regular rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. And the way I'm even squeezing my hands here is very intentional because truly the top of your heart squeezes down, lets fluid into the bottom of your heart. Then your bottom of your heart is stronger, thicker muscle. It squeezes, and then it basically blows blood to the rest of your body. And that is how your kidneys, your liver, your brain, your everything receives blood and oxygen and nutrients is through that rhythmic pumping of your heart. When your heart does not pump with that rhythm, it starts to do what we call an arrhythmia, which means an abnormal rhythm. It's doing, in a fibrillation, it's like your heart is twitching, right? It's literally doing a twitch move, which is not enough force to generate the power needed to get the blood across your body. That is why it is so dangerous, because you have such a short amount of time that your body can tolerate your heart not pumping appropriately and feeding the nutrients, giving your body what it needs to function. And the very first organ to go in general that we see is your brain. Your brain is so complex. Your brain demands so much energy, power, nutrients, that if your heart is not doing that rhythmic beating and getting the nutrients and everything that you need to your brain, it starts to die. Everything that you do in your life that your brain controls, every minute that your heart is not being pumped appropriately, you are losing cells, you are losing function, you are losing livelihood, quite literally. So what can you do? Well, like what we saw in Mr. Hamlin's situation, you need to get hands on chest and you have to compress. And when I say compress, you are literally breaking the ribs, because your ribs, they're an amazing part of your body that is truly shielding your heart, shielding your lungs, shielding a lot of trauma from happening and causing problems. So in order to do the chest compressions that you need to do, which is one hand over another, right over the chest, and then pressing, you are now taking over the heart's job, because it intrinsically is not able to do it on its own. So you press on the chest with all your might, like you truly lean your whole body in, and you are delivering the heartbeats that are generating the amount of strength and power that you need to deliver the blood to the rest of the body. If you don't do it, I want to reiterate that every minute there are not hands on the chest, the brain is losing function, the kidneys are losing function, the liver is losing function, all of the body is failing, and then you can go into something called multi-organ failure. And even if we were to get your heart to restart, there's not going to be much left of your body. And that's the reality. Bystander CPR is so critical. And that is why we even see Mr. Hamlin have a chance at life. Because say this had happened in not such a public arena without people who know what they're supposed to do in those situations, he could have been left on the ground before the ambulance comes, before anything happens, and he's down, no blood pumping to his body for God knows how many minutes. There's not much that can be done. The reason I know this so intimately is because I work as an emergency medicine doctor, and I see an inordinate amount of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. That's what we call them. Somebody whose heart stops beating outside of the hospital and then has to be brought in for resuscitation. Once I see these patients, the things that make me more optimistic about the outcome that I'm going to get is if I hear this person got bystander CPR, this person had a witnessed arrest, which means somebody saw them go down and went right onto the chest. This person has gotten shocks to the heart, which I'll talk about in a second. When I hear that somebody has gotten those things before they've come to the hospital, then I'm like, this is somebody that we might actually be able to resuscitate. And I have seen it. I have seen these turnarounds. I have seen people lose their life. Their heart stopped, but they got immediate bystander CPR. They had an AED applied to the chest, which means this is literally an automatic defibrillator. It's a little machine that schools are supposed to carry. We're supposed to have them everywhere, but unfortunately we see a lot of deserts where there are places that don't have these. But when you apply it to the chest, if you are in a rhythm that electricity can make your heart pump normally again, meaning that you're doing the twitching, you're doing this fibrillation move, but when we shock it with electricity, it goes back. Boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, now your heart is back into the rhythm it's supposed to beat at, and it's delivering the blood and nutrients to the rest of your body. If somebody gets that within minutes of them going down, everything changes. The chance of recovery rises exponentially. The chance of being able to come back to a meaningful, functional life just rises exponentially. It's incredible. It's incredible. And there are so many studies to show that time to chest, time to shocking, time to all of these types of resuscitative efforts makes all of the difference. And that's truly what we saw in Hamlin's case. So I think what's incredible is that he, as devastating as what happened was, it happened in a public scenario, and it happened in a place that it was witnessed, so he was able to get immediate care. And I think that is one of the most powerful things. The other question that's coming up a lot is, what caused it? Why is it that Mr. Hamlin went into this arrhythmia? There's a few theories. There are a lot of things. So I'm not Damar's primary physician. I don't know all of his history. I don't know his family history, all of these sorts of things. But there's not a lot of things that would cause an otherwise healthy 24-year-old who is, obviously healthy enough to be able to play at the highest level of football and has been doing all of these amazing things. There are not many things that would cause somebody to go into cardiac arrest just suddenly, but there are a few. The one that is being discussed the most in the media right now is a condition that is so rare that I didn't even have a medical board exam question on this disease. I don't remember this coming up in my lectures. This is a very niche disorder within the pediatric cardiology world, and it is called commotio cordis. Now, I looked into the pathophysiology of this because I was not so familiar with it. But what happens is that when somebody gets blunt trauma to the chest, it then triggers their heart to go into an arrhythmia, like I was describing earlier in the video, and then causes them to go into cardiac arrest. A lot of things about the circumstances of what happened to Damar does fit with this particular pathophysiology. It was blunt trauma, high speed, high energy, and he soon after went into an arrhythmia. The thing that doesn't fully track is, number one, it is an extraordinarily rare condition. From my reading, I saw that there's something like 30 cases in the entire nation per year, which is, we're talking about a nation of 300 million. I think we're even beyond that now. Hundreds of millions of people, and there's only 30 cases of this in a year. So that's one thing. It doesn't mean that, something rare couldn't have happened here, but it is an exceedingly rare condition, number one. Number two, almost the vast majority of cases that happen are in the pediatric age group, so children, toddler age through age 18. Mr. Hamllin is about 24. So he's not fully, it's not like he's so far out of the range, but for it to be that rare and for him to be decently out of the age range makes it less common, less likely, but not impossible, especially given the circumstances around how he had his arrest. There's a few other things that would cause a child or a young person to go into cardiac arrest. The other really much more common than the commotio cordis that's being discussed is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So that's just a really big term for the muscles of the heart are so big. It's as if whenever you lift weights, I don't have any muscles, just ignore this, but when you lift weights and you build, you shred, you build muscle. But you don't want your heart to be like that. You don't want your heart muscle to be thick, because what happens is that, so even when you're doing that pumping motion that I've been describing to you guys, the muscles are so fat that you can lead to obstruction. So whenever the heart is generating that force to squeeze blood to the rest of the body, it gets caught inside of the bottom of the heart. We have seen some horribly traumatic examples of this. For example, in the early 90s, we had a star basketball athlete who was very similarly in the middle of a play going down the court. All of a sudden, he just hits the floor. And that case was so scary. They showed it to us at the very beginning of med school, which really just I will never forget it, because it really shows you how quickly and how fleeting life can be if there's no intervention. In that case, he did not have an AED, so he did not have defibrillation, which probably could have potentially saved him. And then he did not get bystander CPR. So by the time anything was done for him, he was already so far out of the window of revival. So that was a case that really kind of changed the whole course of how medical care is delivered for sports athletes and all of this sort of thing. That was a really remarkable case, and there have been a few others even since then. So that's another really possible thing that could have happened in Hamlin's case. Again, something that we don't know because we don't have his medical history, but Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is, of course, another thing. There are a few other things that can happen in young men, young people in general. Sometimes we see a little bit more proclivity in male subgroups, but there are some arrhythmias like Wolff-Parkinson-White long QT syndrome. Without going into the nitty-gritty of these, basically it makes it so that, again, that the timing of the rhythmic pumping of the heart is off. And so in some of these, there's too much of a break between when the top of the heart pumps and then the bottom of the heart. Or there's a little bit of dyssynchrony between the pumping of the heart. Those sorts of things. There's a few other arrhythmias that kind of fall under that bucket. And again, in those cases, what we see is that when people or when their bodies are put under very strenuous circumstances, such as playing very high level football or whatever, that they can have episodes where they lose consciousness or where their heart just is unable to maintain the energy requirements that are necessary. It's interesting because, and again, I will continue to add this caveat, I don't know Mr. Hamlin, I don't know his health history. Usually, before age 24, you would get some sort of indication that this is happening. You would maybe get chest pain, shortness of breath while exercising, or something would have come up on, maybe an EKG, or if they've done echocardiograms, which is just like looking at the way that the heart is pumping. Things like that can sometimes trigger an indication of what's going on, but not always. And the horrifying thing about these conditions is sometimes the first time that you learn that you have it is when your heart has stopped. Oh man, this is a really heavy topic. It's so devastating, and I've unfortunately, witnessed it, quite a bit. And it's just so devastating and so shocking for patients and for families. And I am really praying for Damar, for his family to get through this, for him to get recovery. Hey friends. Okay, this is Bernice. I am just checking in the middle of my editing. As you can see, I'm still kind of in the process right now, but there's a couple of updates since I filmed this video. So I haven't had a moment, just because residency has been a little bit hectic, to edit this video quite yet. I filmed it last week. Since then, we did get a couple of updates. So Damar Hamlin is actually awake. He is reaching out, touching his family, talking. He was even able to FaceTime with his teammates, and he's watching the games. He has since been transferred from Cincinnati Medical Center, where he was being treated initially, and has been moved back to Buffalo, so he's closer to home. So he's truly making a lot more of a recovery. So I definitely wanted to put that update out there. The other thing that I just wanted to plug really quick is that a lot of the topics I'm going to talk about in this video are about CPR and the importance, and I had the absolute honor of being published in the Chicago Tribune. So this is the paper copy, but as you can see, it's talking about CPR and how it saved, Mr. Hamlin's life in this case, and why it is critical that we teach it on a wider scale. Of course, this YouTube video is also part of my effort to do that. Hopefully some of the skills that you guys learned in this video are also really helpful, but I'm gonna link the article down below if you want to check out that article in its entirety. So those are the updates, but I hope you guys are enjoying the video. It is so tough to recuperate from injuries of this nature. And so the body needs time, rehab, rest, so much. It needs so much. So I'm just praying for his family. I'm just praying for him. I am just sending so much in the way of good vibes and strength and love and peace. And this cannot be easy. But again, big takeaway, bystander CPR. If you see your loved one, if you are in public and you see someone collapse and they do not have a pulse, you feel under their jawbone, you don't feel a pulse, or you feel right in where their hip, basically where their hip and their thigh meet, and you don't feel a pulse, we're on the chest. Because every minute you're not on the chest, that is brain tissue, kidney, liver, that is the body deteriorating, because it needs that blood flow. To have a chance, it needs that blood flow. So I really hope that's what you take away from this video. And if anything, I mean, it's not often that we see opportunities for this type of conversation to be had on such a large scale. So I hope that this kind of elucidates a little bit about what is going on in this particular case and how it translates into the larger scheme, the ways that we can impact our society and the people around us. And tell me if you enjoyed this video. If you have comments or questions, go down to the comment box below. My big goal is to demystify this whole medical field. And so some of that is talking about my training and demystifying how it is to become a doctor. Some of that is demystifying the experience of being a patient or a provider or any of that stuff. And then also just demystifying how we exist and how I exist in the space. It gives me a lot of joy to make this type of content, especially whenever I hear that it has helped somebody, it has given somebody value. It means truly so much. So I hope that you guys continue to tune in. You can hit the subscribe button below, hit the bell notification. Definitely please hit me with comments or questions. And I will see you guys in the next one. Definitely prayers to Damar Hamlin.